Buckle up for AEC Trailblazers, the Founders Files, where we crack open the stories of the brightest minds in the AEC startup scene. Forget institutional pitches. We're diving deep into the real personal journeys of these industry disruptors. Get ready for some casual chats firsthand.
Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of the AC Trailblazers podcast, where we interview the most amazing founders of the AC. Today with us, we have Eric Heritzer. Is a third-generation builder, entrepreneur, and innovator in the construction industry. With a master's in building construction management from the University of Florida, he built his career leading high-impact projects across South Florida. After years in operations, he founded SubBase, a game-changing platform that streamlines material procurement for specialty contractors and distributors without interrupting their workflow. As CEO, Eric is bridging the gap between construction and technology, helping teams simplify procurement, enhance efficiency, and take control of their margins. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Valentine, for having me. Appreciate being on.
It's just interesting that we were just speaking that you're in South Florida as well. It's exciting place to be with construction, right? Nowadays.
It's to me, it's not only it's exciting, but it's really the place where I started too. So I've seen before Miami, before Brickell even existed, really, before the high-rise boom existed. I was down. I was in obviously middle school, but yeah, Miami's a great place to be. South Florida in general, from a construction perspective, is I think one of the most exciting places to not just live, but to see and witness the construction that's going on all around. It's amazing.
It's just insane. Like from my apartment only, I can count at least 20 cranes. Like it's booming. And I've seen this happening in not only South Florida, but Florida in general. So great place to be based. But you've always been living here in Florida, or?
Yeah. So I grew up. I was actually so let's go all the way back. I was born in Hollywood, Florida. Went to school in Davie, Florida. Went to college at the University of Florida. Came back, lived in Palm Beach. But really, when I was living in Palm Beach, I was working in Miami. So I was working between Miami and Fort Lauderdale. I was working in the subcontractor realm for a large specialty trade contractor, and never left, honestly, Florida. Still live here today. We operate in the Fort Lauderdale area. I live in Palm Beach still, but I've been never left. I would say I was born and raised here, so I've seen the entire ecosystem change as far as the building of almost every area in the Tri-County area in South Florida.
Interesting. You have been living here since Florida was cheap, or like nowadays it's just insane.
I was living here when the Miami Arena existed and the Panthers started playing there, when the Heat were born, right? So like I was in downtown Miami before, seeing all of what's gone on there. And honestly, what's happened is pretty wild, and where it's going is even cooler.
It's just incredible. Like, I feel it's one of the best places to be nowadays here in the US. And just want to know how you ended up. I know you told me like you work with subcontractors and your family has been in business forever, but how you ended up deciding, hey, I'm in like old school construction, let's call it that way, and move into creating your own startup. How you decided to do that?
So I was always, my time spent in construction was a mixture of pre-construction, heavy operations, but I was always tasked at the companies I work with on the technology front because we were always a little bit more forward thinking as far as how can we optimize current processes that in construction today, no matter what side of the fence you are, could be extremely manual and very cumbersome and lacking a lot of, visibility, right? So I was tasked with implementing software at the company where we started to build SubBase really early on. And post-COVID, we started to realize that there was a big issue with how construction materials, specifically at the subcontractor level, so typically a subcontractor who's managing all of this workflow on just materials, is not just sourcing these materials as far as requests coming into a centralized place, but because of the price fluctuations that were going on for basic raw materials or basic commodities, it started to lean itself towards being able to track in a more efficient way. And so I started building software with an advisor who was more tech savvy as far as technical than I was, but I had the industry expertise to understand where things needed to go to build the right product with the right workflow to get the adoption. And we started building it while I was also building in Doral, Florida. So I was building a pretty awesome mixed-use facility, commercial facility in Doral. But as we were building the software, we were letting our subcontractors use it, give us feedback. And one thing led to another. I started seeing more people interested in, getting demos of what we were building versus speaking to us about kind of the project. And we decided collectively that this was a decision that was going to impact in a great way the entire industry and that I wanted to take it on full time. And so 2022, I left what was a phenomenal business. Still, they're doing amazing, to really pursue what is now SubBase. It wasn't called that before, to really tackle the problems of material management holistically. And what that means is connecting the field with the office, with their vendors, with their internal stakeholders, and really providing visibility that never existed before when you have everything under one umbrella. And there's a range of problems that we solve for and a range of stakeholders we work with. But that's how I got into it, is I saw it firsthand. I saw the struggles of the field trying to get the materials and track it. I saw the back office accounting teams with stacks of paper on their desk trying to reconcile invoices to their budget, and PMs having to go from the job site to an office to look through stacks of paper. And we realized that there was a better solution. And as we started to layer on the better solution, we noticed the data behind it and giving them better insights into how they're purchasing could lead to a lot more, savings and a lot more time and money back into the pockets of those companies. And that's how SubBase essentially was born.
Interesting. And again, I've been in construction as well. My background is different than yours. I'm an architect. Sorry for that. But
well,
I'm in rehab now. I'm in technology as well. So, but it's just interesting on how everything's like, it sounds so outdated in the AC, and even when we're just speaking about something as basic as data, right? Like, we're not saying, hey, you don't have the latest AI model, or we're just saying, just access the right data. And what do you think is the reason behind it? What do you think the reason behind the lack of technology in our industry is happening out there?
So I think there's a couple of reasons why technology lacks, specifically in the subcontractor world that we see, which would be, let's call it the contractor world, is a lot of people are just used to the status quo of like, hey, like my materials show up on site and a phone call is made, right? And they're not really looking to improve because they haven't really been educated on the software technology that's out there that could drive a lot more, not just savings as far as time, but a lot more dollars back into the people that are the ones out there trying to manually track all this. And I think it starts at the top. So we do a lot of education. We do a lot of like making sure that the right people are in the right spot, because technology in construction is only as good as the people that are honestly willing to adopt it. What I mean by that is companies have been purchasing materials for forever before SubBase existed. But companies now that are having struggles finding the right labor, trying to grow from 20 million to 50 million, are starting to realize that they do need the right tools that maybe didn't exist years ago to manage that flow. And so the largest hurdle that we always have is implementing, right? Making sure that the right person is there to implement, and making sure that the right culture is in the fit of the company, because a lot of times an owner may buy a piece of software, hand it off to their field teams, and the field teams have no idea why this change is happening. And that creates a lot of friction. So we've learned from really just experience that, hey, if you want to have great technology solutions in the industry, not only do you have to build something that really speaks to the workflows today without changing it, but you have to have the buy-in from a cultural perspective, which is sometimes the biggest hurdle and why you see adoption not take entire precedent over, the entire trades. It's really because of that.
No, absolutely. I agree on that. Like, you can have the best platform out there, but if you don't have a good implementation strategy or a match with the culture of the company, there is no way it's going to work. Even if it's going to save them 99% of the time of what they're doing, it's not going to work. So I agree on that as well. And something that also comes to my mind is a lot of startups are either, or most startups, I know that for sure, in the AC are targeting either design, which for obvious reasons might be a little bit easier because it's much more easier to deal with the virtual space and not with the physical
Sure.
things, right? And also most startups try to go more upstream, like trying to sell to the owners, architects, or general contractors, or even engineers. But what do you think? Because you're selling mostly to subcontractors, do you think that there's a big opportunity there, and what the difference is between selling to or working with? Let's not put it like that. Let's put it like working with subs.
I think the biggest problem is most people don't understand the subcontractor business. The reason why I'm saying that is because unless you've worked at a subcontractor's business, unless you've physically seen how they run the business and what makes them profitable, what makes them efficient, it's hard to go sell them software. A subcontractor's business is 80% labor, equipment, and material. And equipment, for the most part, is probably rental based than just buying, not buying. So let's say, 70% is labor and material, 10% or 15% is equipment, right? So that percentage is a very large chunk of how that company makes money. And there's multiple different workflows involved with that. And there's a lot of risk associated with that. Subcontractors have a lot of risk today managing projects because it's all risk, labor and material. It literally is all risk. So in order to get them to adopt technology, there's a couple things that have to happen. One, you have to be able to show that you can solve a problem very fast. Two, you have to be able to show that the problem you're solving is not going to change the way they're doing it today because they don't want to take the risk, right? Because there's a lot at stake for them. And three, they want social proof. A lot of subcontractors are not willing to be guinea pigs as far as early adopters, and they want to have the social proof from others before they would adopt. And so the reason we chose the subcontractor route was because we know how big the problem is when it comes to materials management and all the complexities involved with it. And we also understand how the relationships work between a subcontractor and all the material suppliers. It's very relationship heavy. And that's how we've done well, is by building relationships, because we come from the industry, so we can speak the language of how a subcontractor typically runs his business. So I think that what you've seen is, right, GCs have adopted technology because, they have specific tools for them that do very well. People have cracked that nut as far as figuring out how a GC runs their business. People have not gone as deep as we're going in the subcontractor world because of its complexities. And like I mentioned before, a lot of people also can't speak the language of the field. And the field is what makes subcontractors profitable. That's how they win, jobs. That's how they exceed, is by being able to actually manage that labor material from a field perspective.
I think you are right on the spot that the risk is so much bigger when you're dealing with construction, and it's just scary. I mean, I don't know if it's my inner architect or what, but it's just scary if you speak to me about construction. And for me, it's like, oh, there are so many variables, and everything you can imagine is dirty and chaotic, and not necessarily has to be. But it's really interesting what you guys are doing. And also, I just want to know how you deal with the materials management, because that's something that it's always a problem. Because it not only depends on the subcontractors, but also depends on the suppliers and the supply chain. And do you help with that specific piece as well?
Yeah. So we help very much so, on all the intricate workflows that are involved with a subcontractor or a self-performing GC that buys a lot of materials, dial in the appropriate motion that they're doing today in silos, right? A company that's purchasing millions of dollars a year of materials most likely is doing it very manual. The data is living on Excels, emails, text messages. The accounting teams are manually punching in invoices after they've been potentially reconciled. There's no real updates on budgets until all that invoice information gets into their accounting system. And we take all of that manual process, which we know very well, and we give them the right tool, just like a carpenter, right, has the right tools in a job to close up a form. We give the back office, the vendors, and the field the right tool to manage a large piece of their profit, which is their materials. So how do we help, right? We help by giving them a process that they may have already, but streamlined. We help by introducing new types of technology, layering on artificial intelligence to take the manual process of pairing an invoice to an order and reconciling it in real time. We give them visibility between the logs of all their different projects, which vendors have responded and confirmed orders, right? And on the flip side, we give them financial insights so they can make better purchasing decisions depending on the job, depending on the item. And this is stuff that never existed before, because to do this in silos didn't make sense. Not every project is going to run their own material database. But inside of SubBase, we've created a flexible database where you can use it on different projects and track historically what your spend was by line item. And we also know the flexibility that's needed because each subcontractor has a different cost coding structure. You can have the same company, the same company that's owned by a bigger conglomerate that has different cost code structures, right? Every nuance of how a material is purchased is flexible in nature, and that's what we've built. Is we speak the language of how it's done without really changing it, because as soon as you introduce a lot of change, that's where you introduce a lot of friction, and you won't get the adoption.
No, absolutely, and that I think applies to the whole industry, not only subcontractors. Is like, there are a lot of companies trying to, disrupt the whole thing and do something completely different. And I feel that might work better in other industries than ours. In ours, it's more like, hey, we're still not reconciling data. We're still not connecting stuff. And you want me to change the whole process? Like, just at least give me the basics, and then we can speak maybe in the future of disrupting the whole thing. So
100%.
Yeah, I do agree on that. And also, I know firsthand a lot of colleagues who are SAPs, and they are doing the purchasing with the people they know. Like, and even if the suppliers or vendors are not good vendors, it's the people they know. So it's
very relationship heavy.
Correct.
And that's what we understood from day one is you can't introduce, it has to be what you're used to. And buying materials is very relationship heavy. You know who you're going to buy from. It's not an Amazon discovery process of just, I'm just going to start discovering what I need today. It's, I know what I want. I know where to get it from. And these are trusted relationships that have been built for years over time.
You think that's going to change? Like, imagine that we're in a place where we have much more technology and we can get more data of, like, maybe a vendor from a different state that might have better prices and might be as good as, but because I don't know the guy, I will never purchase from that specific vendor. Do you think that once we reach a much better level of technology, that's going to change, and SAPs are going to be more interested on changing the vendors if they are better prices or better, I don't know.
I don't think, I think what's going to I don't think that's going to change. I think what's going to change is, like, vendors aren't going to have to do as much manual entry to order take, which is what's happening today. There's a lot of orders coming in that they're taking, and they're not really able to drive home more sales because they're constrained by the amount of volume coming in and the tools they have to really provide great customer service. I think what you're going to see is vendors that are going to have better tools to sell more materials to the right customers at the right price. And I don't think it's going to change the way, I don't think it's going to introduce, new vendors that they haven't heard of. I think it's going to enhance that relationship and be able to really cut down on all the waste. I think there's a lot of waste right now that's happening between the whole process of requesting pricing, right? And then going from a price into an order, entering it into a system on their side, tracking and delivery, 20 different phone calls back and forth. If you're actually trying to track something in real time, it does not exist today, other than calling the rep, understanding where it's going to happen, and then trying to dial this into a calendar if you want to track it. All of that can actually be automated in a much more centralized place that gives a better experience for both sides of how materials are going to move. I think that's where the biggest change is going to be. Not necessarily introducing a new way of ordering, but a more streamlined approach to really cutting out the waste.
Interesting. You don't think that ever never is going to happen in our industry that we're going to have the Amazon of construction materials?
No, I think, well, I know Amazon is in the space, but I think that I think the reason why is because building a project is different than it's different than manufacturing as far as manufacturing cars. When you're building in construction, everything is custom. You can have the same building in the same area down the street, and it's going to be different. Everything that happens in that custom way, is also siloed to the regions, right? We have different building codes in different areas of the country for certain reasons. You're not building in timber down in South Florida. You're building very heavy block, very heavy concrete to meet the wind codes because, hey, at the end of the day, there's hurricanes that come here. And I think that part of the reason why it's not going to be that easy is just having one winner take all as far as the vendor side is concerned is because there's so much product out there and it's so fragmented. The way that we're building all over the country is different, and that has to accommodate for the way that you're selling and managing those materials.
That makes sense. No, absolutely. But I do think that maybe not the Amazon, true, but prefab I think is gonna improve because once you have better technology.
That I don't disagree with. But in order to do prefab, you're still going to have to order. You're still going to have those materials brought somewhere to actually prefabricate. But yes, I agree. I think the prefab the notion of prefabricate is happening today, right? There's bathroom pods that are being built in prefab warehouses that are getting flown in for hospitals, right? That are very cookie cutter as far as being able to fly in, drop it in place, and move on. I think that's a phenomenal use case for prefab, and I think prefab is a phenomenal piece of the construction operation that is going to change the way that we become more efficient. But as far as the material management piece of that, I do think there's still going to be a lot that needs to be figured out there to fully automate it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree on that. And again, you're still gonna purchase instead of, like you said, instead of just buying pipes and a toilet, it's gonna be the whole toilet pod, right? It's gonna be the whole thing, and it's gonna be the whole assembly. Yeah, it's gonna be less pieces, I guess, and less work during the installing of those pieces, but you're gonna still need to deal with that. And I do agree. For that to happen, we at least need to work with the current methods, and then we might be able to automate that as well. Absolutely. It's just interesting how much things are going to change soon. What else do you think is going to be disrupted in the subs world that maybe SubBase be able to work and help?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing we're seeing in the sub world that we can help, and not really disrupt, but help change as far as for the better is the ability for a subcontractor to utilize their data in a way that actually makes sense for them to proactively make better decisions. I think that a large piece of why there's so many problems with the way people see the tech, especially construction technology at the sub level, is there's a lot of moving parts on the data. A material database, for example, you can buy the same box of nails from 5 different vendors, and each vendor calls it something different. In order for you to actually make real of what that actually means as far as pricing, you have to start to structure the data in a way that makes sense for you to actually interpret it. And so what technology is doing is it's allowing you to be more structured, meaning you can start to take what the field team calls a certain box of nails and translate that into what the vendor will call it without changing the way that it's always been done, because a guy who is working in the field is not going to have the time, if he's ordering a box of nails from vendor Y, to call it that exact item. He knows what he wants. He's always been calling it this way, but let's translate that with technology to give the vendor what he needs and keep the subcontractor happy. That type of technology is actually something that is going to change the way that you can streamline the efficiency. And once you have that streamlined from a structure standpoint, then you can start looking at the data to make better decisions, starting to see where things potentially could move from a forecasting perspective that haven't been shown before. It'd be great to show the pre-construction teams, right, who have a new product they're bidding, what the price of 2x4 Southern Yellow Pine lumber is in the local market. That doesn't exist today. The only way that they find that out is if they go call for a quote or they look at historical pricing, and they don't have time to do that. So that's kind of where we're excited about diving in. But it's really it's really centered around like making the best use case out of the data that's in the platform today and where is it headed as far as a forecast.
That's interesting. Do you also foresee that that's going to happen between companies as well? Because, for example, like we had one client that wanted to create basically an AI model based on drawings, and the guy didn't have a big database of drawings. So how on earth am I going to train an AI model if I don't have enough data? And I feel this is going to happen to many companies that they don't have enough data. They might have certain amount of data, but not enough to train their own models. You foresee that there's going to be a way in the future that you're going to be able to train data from multiple clients, for sure, taking into account that no, there's not going to be data leaks between confidential information or anything like that. But do you think that something like that is going to happen in the future?
Yeah, it's already happening. So there's models out there that people are building that we're working on top of, that we're building, that are essentially able to structure the data in a way that allows this type of functionality. Just a matter of time for it to actually be unlocked to the next level. But you also need companies that are actually able to use the systems and bring the data in because of how fragmented it is. You can go to different vendors right now and ask for their catalogs, and it's almost impossible to pull it off. Some of them don't even have it. They don't even know where to start. So starting with centralizing is the most important piece, and then layering on the structure is where we're headed right now. So we've centralized it. Now we structure it. And then once you've structured it in a way, you can start to read from it and make better decisions. That ultimately is like the end goal here, as far as how you can make a lot of insights from the current data today. That's just, like I said before, very siloed.
No, that makes sense. And that's an automated process that just using AI, you can maybe create a match between, like you said, for example, the nails example of, hey, I want to watch the nails naming and do like some standardized naming based on just reading it and processing it through AI? Or do you think you still need to do a manual process of adjusting the data before we process it?
Up front, there is a bit of a manual process to train it, but once it's been trained, you can do pretty well with confidence scores and you can get pretty far. There's a big need for that in the industry right now, especially on the vendor side, is how do you dial that in? Because at the end of the day, the problem isn't the amount of orders being consumed. It's honestly, the problem is the fact that the data, right, that gets transferred from the field, maybe to an office, back to a vendor, could touch 3 different people, and the name can change 3 different ways. And that's where the back and forth is. That's what we're eliminating, is the back and forth for someone to really know from the get-go, this is what I want, and this is what it's called for this vendor. And that's exactly where technology is moving to be able to solve those problems.
And you guys, how are you approaching dealing with, because your clients are subs, but do you also have contact with vendors and work with them?
We do. So we help with vendors who are heavy in the platform, upload price sheets, right? Upload certain aspects. We do a lot, and we have a lot coming on our roadmap for vendors as well. It's a big piece of why we've been successful, is because we can communicate with the vendor efficiently, but we have a lot more to do as far as how to move that data into their systems, give them better insights, and really make the experience for them selling to their end user 10 times better today than just, the email, text, and phone calls that they're doing.
Technically, if you work with so many vendors, you could be the Amazon of the construction industry yourself. Like at certain point, I don't know.
Yeah, look, Amazon I know is entering the space. They have a lot going on as well as far as getting to the construction space. But again, everyone sees that like it is not an Amazon experience in construction. There's workflows involved. There's relationships. There's a lot that goes into purchasing.
No, absolutely. But I mean, maybe Amazon was a bad analogy. But I mean,
no, but I know what you're saying.
Being able to centralize, having all the data, having all these vendors would be like, if I'm a sub, I would be like, hey man, just show me what you got, and then I can have better options.
Yep. Yeah, and look, eventually, I think the way of the future is to, again, eliminate the bottlenecks, make the purchasing experience the way it should be, right? Not very manual, give more visibility, and give people better tools, because their businesses are not slowing down. They're growing. We're building more. It's hard to find the right talent, and the right tools need to exist for them to be successful.
Yeah. That's true. And what's the next steps for SubBase? What are the next, like, how's SubBase gonna look in, I don't know, 3-4 years from now?
Yeah. So like I said, very heavy approach on the vendor side. By that time, vendors are going to be fully automating a lot of their workflows, giving their clients better insights into where their deliveries are, forecasting better, giving them better insights. If they're opening up branches in different areas of the country, they can start to see where selling right in one branch versus the other could be winning versus losing. On the sub side, right, getting deeper into the finances, helping people streamline payments faster as far as being able to reconcile with full automation. A lot of field adoption is around a lot of the mobile we're building for, making it so simple, just like you're picking up and calling in an order or speaking over a phone, like making that synergy between a phone and having it translate into SubBase, English or Spanish, totally automated. And really, honestly, going deeper into different pieces of the workflow that are similar to materials, like equipment rental. We have a lot of requests for equipment rental right now, getting heavier into different types of purchasing, committed orders versus consumables. There's so much that goes into purchasing, and there's so many different steps. We're bringing it all into one hood and one umbrella to make it so simple that purchasing outside of SubBase becomes more of a pain in the ass. That's the goal.
That's really interesting future, and I love you mentioned Spanish. Being in Florida, that's for sure a must in construction. Yeah.
So a lot of what we're building on the mobile side is fully, conversational, Spanish to English. Speaking Spanish, we'll find it, boom, ping to English. Or vice versa.
Something. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's something that sometimes it's not considered by startups, but like when you go to the field in not only Florida, but a lot of states,
different
people in construction. Yeah. They speak Spanish. Like they might not even speak any English at all.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like whether you like it or not.
Users on the platform today that are very heavy Spanish speakers. We're building for that because we understand how it needs to work, and we also want to provide a tool that, again, doesn't change the way that they're doing it today.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Absolutely. Okay, this has been really interesting. But before we wrap this up, can I ask you a couple of ping pong questions?
Yeah.
All right. Can you tell me a great AEC software? Please don't say SubBase. We know it's the best out there, but the second best.
The second best software. So there's a company also out of South Florida that does a lot of labor tracking. Company called Smart Barrel. They have a really, really awesome product. The founder's great, comes from the industry. We've known him very well. They complement the labor piece of what we've discussed, of like bringing all that risk into one. It's a phenomenal company, and really, really like recommend for labor tracking, because that's another big problem that people are trying to solve for.
Cool. What do you think is the next big trend in the AC?
Anything that revolves around artificial intelligence, but taking out all the manual steps of a process. That is by far the next biggest thing. It's what's happening today, and we're just seeing the early adopters on it. This is very, very early, very, very new, but that's the next biggest thing.
Absolutely agree. If you could collaborate with any person in history, which person would you choose?
Right now, I would probably choose... Honestly, I would probably choose to collaborate with... That's a good question.
It can be a that person, right? Like
no,
necessarily.
I'm thinking right now. I would love to... Like, I think what Jeff Bezos has done with Amazon is wild. I think he's obviously built an unbelievable business. I think that would be a collaboration for many reasons. Selfishly because of what we're building, but more so because of where he was and where he's headed as far as the logistics play of what he's done is it changed the world. So I would say probably Bezos right now.
Absolutely. And he's a Florida guy. So
he's a Florida guy. He went to high school down in Miami.
Yeah.
And I know that he's looking to get into the construction material space.
Interesting. Who knows?
Yep.
And last but not least, what's your favorite building in the world, and have you ever visited?
My favorite building in the world, It's a great question. I'm trying to think. So I think it would probably be the Burj Khalifa. I've not visited it yet, but I just remember growing up as a kid, seeing it come to life. And I think that what's going on as far as how they're building skyscrapers over there is just mind blowing. So I would probably say that. I think that is something that I've always wanted to see, but never got a chance to see it yet. But hopefully one day I probably will, just given the size of the structure. I'm a structures guy, so seeing how they built it and what they built was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, there's nothing like that in the whole world. It's just insane. Yeah. All right. And before we say goodbye to each other, can you tell everybody where they can know more about SubBase or about yourself?
So SubBase. So our website is pretty easy. SubBase.io. SubBase.io. LinkedIn, we're very active. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can search my name on LinkedIn. You can follow us. If you want to learn more about what we're doing in the product, obviously you can go to the website or through LinkedIn. We're pretty active on both, and we respond very quickly. So always looking to chat with people that are interested or those that want to learn more. But that's kind of the fastest way to get in contact with us.
Absolutely. All right, Eric. Thanks so much for your time, and for sure you're gonna have a bright future. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to our listeners. If you like this content, you can find past and upcoming episodes in ascworks.everse.com and at all of our Everse social media. We'd love to hear from you and recommendations for new content, so leave us a DM and we'll make sure to catch it.